Hey everybody, welcome to a video that's a little bit late. I'm going to do my top 10 games of 2024. I planned to have this out a little late anyway, but then I got hit with the old 2020 plague, and so that was a couple weeks ago, and now I'm finally recovered a little bit. Doing fine, thank you, and and so I figured, well, I might as well get this done now. And so I wanted to bring this to you for like at least a month now, and unfortunately, just life circumstances kind of prevented that. But let's jump into it. I'm excited to share it with you, and we'll just jump right into my number 10. My number 10 is going to be the Altered trading card game, and really have enjoyed this game over the last year. It does some stuff that's really unique and different with the whole app integration with Board Game Arena, the way that the kind of rarities and things like that work, and also the gameplay, which is not your typical, smash each other in the face until, one side loses a certain amount of hit points or something like that. This has an interesting sort of tug of war aspect, and you get like multiple kind of fields that you're dealing with the hero and the companion, and trying to, work kind of multiple, almost like little lanes in a way. So it kind of has it's not quite like a lane game, because you have the different games like well, there's a bunch of different games, but like Battle Line and things like that are very old games that are very like abstract numbers games, or more modern games like a Soul Forge or something like that. So it kind of plays in a little bit in that space, but it's really not like a normal lane game. But I think this one, I really wanted to give this one a mention on this kind of list because it just does so many things differently, and it does so many things well, that I think it deserves a mention. I think the first expansion has just hit, so I've not seen it anywhere around here or really heard much of anything about it online, unfortunately. But hopefully the game can maintain a little bit of steam. It's kind of a crowded space in the TCG world these days. I mean, there's Magic, of course, but I see a lot of people still talking about Lorcana on Star Wars Unlimited. The One Piece game seems to be being played everywhere around here, which I haven't really heard much about online. But locally here, there's all these different places are running One Piece all the time. So anyway, so it is a crowded space for Altered to try to survive in, but I think it deserves a mention there. So anyway, that's number 10, Altered. Number 9 is Primal: The Awakening. And this was a big box, big Kickstarter game with lots of minis and all that stuff, and a kind of a big campaign. Really what the gist of this one is kind of like Monster Hunter, although there is a Monster Hunter board game, which I've not played. But you just, you have a couple of heroes fighting on kind of a little tactical map, so to speak. It's more of a tactical display than anything. And, trying to work around the different kind of combos and special abilities of the different monsters. And then there's a small, like, light dusting of a narrative campaign there, which is just like a little kind of very quick, place to upgrade your weapons and your skills and things like that. You'll sort of gather, items and resources off of the monster, just like in Monster Hunter, and then upgrade your weapons and your abilities and your skills. And each character has like their own little deck of cards, so it's kind of like an Oathsworn kind of thing that way. But I would say from a purely like mechanical combat sense, this is right up there with the best of those games, like a Kingdom Death, Oathsworn, probably forgetting a bunch of others. Maybe there's some others that I haven't played. But from a purely like just strategic, tactical card play, strategy, whole kind of thing, it's really, really solid and really good and very interesting and fun. And I will say, it seems to me, like in my expectation, this kind of game, Oathsworn kind of killed everything because it has all of that tactical gameplay, but also like really amazing narrative and puzzles and all kinds of stuff. So if you're going into it looking for something like that, it doesn't quite have that other stuff. But if you want something that's really kind of a crunchy thing, and really something that you don't even need to play as a campaign, you can just kind of pick up scenarios and play them as one-offs, then I think, this is a really, really good game for that. So that's Primal: The Awakening, number 9. Number 8 is Life in Reterra. And this is actually one of 2 Eric Lang designs, and I can't remember, I apologize if this was a co-design. I think this was. I know the next one on the list, right after this, is a co-design. But this is a really interesting game. It's a tile placement game, you know, kind of like a Carcassonne game, but it kind of reminds me of a game from Alexander Pfister, who did Great Western Trail and stuff. He did a game called Isle of Skye, which is a really cool tile placement game, and that kind of had like bidding in it, whereas this one has like a real, it's almost even more streamlined than Isle of Skye. Isle of Skye had a few little mechanisms on it, but it's one of the best tile placement games I've played, Isle of Skye. And this one is right there with it. Really clean, abstract design, but really smartly done. And there's a lot of like replayability in the sense of like when you set up these tiles, they're always going to have like different combinations of abilities. And you're going to be placing, you know, certain types of tiles in different ways in each game. And it's hard to express something like this with an abstract, but it's very satisfying and clean, and it gets you to kind of come back and want to keep playing it, and just kind of seeing how things mix it up. And the one thing I talked about it in the review of this, it does this really cool thing where and to me this is like the linchpin of the whole game design for me. You get 3 tiles in your hand. And then the rest, you kind of just, you know, you're drafting them off a display of tiles, and you're saying, okay, I want to take this one and place it down. You know, kind of like Carcassonne in a way, you know, you draw a tile and put it down. But this one gives you 3 to start. And so now you know you have this small known entity. And then you can kind of like work around that, because you're like, okay, I know I'm going to need to like have this like keystone tile at some point. And it may land for me in the display that I draft, but that's something that, you know, you can't really count on. And if you're a very strategic minded gamer, I think that would be frustrating. Now, granted, the game doesn't take very long to play. It's like a half an hour. So, you know, get over it if your strategy doesn't work out. But this is cool because it gives you those 3 tiles, and you're like, okay, I know I can count on these. So as I'm going to draft and do things and try to score points in all these varieties of ways, I know I've got the linchpin here, and this can lock it in. And, you know, that may not be obvious like at the deal of the hands, but, you know, a couple turns in, you're like, okay, now I know I guarantee got this. So you can play around that. And that's just such a cool, small little thing. That's just really neat. And it really kind of just syncs up the design perfectly. So anyway, that's Life in Reterra. And then number 7 here, also an Eric Lang game. This one I know from memory because I just reviewed it not long ago, is a co-design with Calvin Wong. And this is Mass Effect, the board game. And I was really impressed. Like I said, I just did a review of it, and it's kind of a short campaign game. You're playing anywhere from 3 to 5 scenarios, and it's a branching thing. So when you play it again, you can kind of go down a completely different branch in a sense. And I think, you know, I didn't count up like how many paths, but there's a good amount of replayability in this. And then it also has the nice little addition of, you always take 4 characters, but you have 5. So you always take the shepherd character, which is like the leader of the group, and then you've got 4 others that you can play with. And one thing I did mention in the review, which having played it again after the review is kind of interesting, which I'll just mention it here. I talked a lot of this stuff to death in the review, but the one kind of cool thing is there is a way. So when you play the game, you get experience. You kill monsters, you get experience, you level up, and you kind of have like a level cap, like per scenario. So once you kind of get 3 experience per character, they've leveled up for that scenario. That's as much as they're going to get. And then, like I said, you only take shepherd plus 3 others. So there's going to be one kind of straggler off to the side. But there is ways to kind of get experience through, I think it's called like Intel or something. And it's a little bit randomized. But when I initially played it through the first time, I would just get that, and then you would bank that. And it's not really like experience. It gives you like an unlock. So it's like a free level. And that was kind of cool. It's like, oh, you can kind of double down with your team and then kind of level them up a little bit quicker. But if you've left somebody kind of straggling, you can use it for them. Because I found that in some situations, you're like, gosh, I wish I'd been playing, you know, this one character. Like there's the names are escaping me. Alia, the hacker type character. and then there's like the big beefcake guy. And there were times like, man, I wish I'd leveled them more, because this scenario kind of lends itself to that. And I was like, oh man, you can totally just kind of level up your other straggler character kind of offline, if you will, in a sense. And so you can kind of save them for that. And that's actually, I don't know that that's the smartest way to play or like the right way to play, but it's a choice. So you can really double down on some other characters and make them exceptionally powerful, because the game kind of scales up. And I was like, man, that's really cool. And I didn't realize that at the time when I had first did the review, having only played through the campaign one time at that point. But there's a lot of cool other really kind of smart things. It's very, again, kind of like Life in Runeterra in a way. It's very kind of an efficient, elegant, small sort of legacy campaign game, although there's no legacy aspect to it because you don't tear anything up. But you do use dry erase markers, and that's kind of like your campaign log, is you mark it on the various character sheets, and also there's like a campaign sheet, and then if you get done, you can just file those away, and you pull them out, and then you're exactly where you were, and you just erase it when you want to start a new campaign. So it's really, really interesting and cool, and it's got something that's nice about it, where it's a bit puzzly in terms of like the combat tactics and the spatial part of it, which is really nice. And it kind of like leans into that as well, which makes it a lot of fun. And, you know, like I said, the whole variable path thing is pretty neat. And there's also, last thing I want to mention here, is there's the two sort of types of victory, which adds to that kind of puzzle aspect, because you can say, okay, well, if I do it this way, this is kind of like the easy victory, but it kind of like, the game kind of like tempts you. You're like, oh, but if I do this, yeah, it's a little bit harder, but maybe I like that reward a little bit better, because it kind of rewards you differently with the Vanguard versus the, I don't know, it's just colors in my head, the red versus the blue victory. Renegade, that's what I'm thinking of, Vanguard and Renegade. And so it has like a lot of those little interesting decisions. And like I said, you can do 3 games or 5 games, although I think you should do it 5, because, and I don't think I mentioned this in the review, and I should have, but maybe I did. But if you don't do the optional ones, that gives you less opportunities to level up. So it's kind of like, I think I didn't say this, I had it in my notes though, because I'm remembering it. If you just play 1, 2, 3, you've missed 2 like levels of leveling up. So when you get to the last one, you won't be as strong. So you're kind of like making yourself play at hard mode, which is, you know, that's a choice, right? And it gives you some replayability, but you're going to have more abilities and stuff if you play through with 5. So I would recommend it 5, especially the first time you play it. Anyway, a little tangent there. So that's Mass Effect, the board game. And then number 6 here is another one. I think this is the last one I reviewed. I can't remember. Duel for Middle Earth. This is one that I was really kind of, one of the reasons I wanted to kind of hang out for this video. I played some other games too that I don't want to get sidetracked, but there's one I think I would have put on this list, but I'm not sure. I'm going to play it again, and you know, it's really good. And anyway, who cares? But Duel for Middle Earth was one I was like, sure, because this is the buzz about it, and I had watched, I think, Rodney Smith's video about it, and I was like, oh man, that looks really good. Sometimes, you know, when you see the rules and you just know, like the game starts speaking to you, and I needed that. And then I played it a few times now, and it's completely replaced Seven Wonders Duel for me. It's just a fantastic, smart little game. A lot of people have said a lot of stuff about it over this last year, but I cannot recommend Duel for Middle Earth enough. It's just one of those addictive little things that, you know, it takes you 20-30 minutes to play. It's got some interesting tactical, strategic type of things, and yeah, it's just really cool. It's a lot of fun, and I think they've really got like the formula down, you know, with the whole duel thing, at least the special sort of pyramid card drafting duel. I don't know, it's just a lot of fun. It just works perfectly, all the stuff. Anyway, so I don't want to beat that one to death or anything. So that's number 6 there, Duel for Middle Earth. Number 5 is Dune War for Arrakis. And I want to pause here because especially these top 5, but you know, even the last several that I talked about here, Duel for Middle Earth, Mass Effect, you know, I feel like this is for me, it was a very strong year, and especially with these top 5, because I kind of think like all 5 of these I could have put at number 1, to be honest with you. So anyway, just having said that, Dune War for Arrakis is my number 5. And this is kind of the big box, it was a big Kickstarter from Come On. And in the vein of like War of the Ring, Star Wars Rebellion, where it's like a 2-player head-to-head. Although it does play 4, I've not played it 4. And it's, Harkonnens versus Atreides in this, set in the Dune universe. And this one I really like. I think this is probably my favorite of those style of games. I really like War of the Ring. I really like Star Wars Rebellion. I feel like there's another game in that world, that sort of 2-player epic head-to-head game that I'm forgetting. But Star Wars Rebellion I liked a little bit more than War of the Ring. But War of the Ring's really good. And then War for Arrakis, though, I think I like... Battle of 5 Armies is kind of the same thing. And that's kind of the Hobbit one. But this one, there's a couple things going for it. First of all, I'm more of a Dune and a Star Wars person than I am a Lord of the Rings person. It's just, that's just whatever. I'm definitely more of a Dune person than a Star Wars person. And the couple of things that's really neat about this is the asymmetry in this game is a little bit more, how do I put this? Because it's pretty present on all of these games that I'm talking about, War of the Ring and Star Wars Rebellion in this. But there's something very sort of, because this one's kind of sits, here's how I'll say it, and the words are going to fail what I'm trying to impress upon you. But War for Arrakis is more like Battle of 5 Armies than any of these other games. It's a little bit quicker. It doesn't take quite as long to play as Rebellion and certainly War of the Ring. It's a little bit more combat oriented. Now the other ones have a ton of combat in them, but Battle of 5 Armies is basically just combat. And this is basically like just combat. There's other things going on, with like the prescience cards and some other asymmetrical abilities. But like War of the Ring is a bunch of combat, plus you've got Sam and Frodo, that whole thing, and you've got like the whole alliance building thing. In Rebellion, there's combat, but then you're trying to do like these little like espionage type of things. That's kind of really the main game. Whereas this one is, I think, probably the most balanced in terms of like combat versus extracurricular, which I really like. And again, I'm biased for Dune, so take it easy with what I'm saying here. But and then the other part of it is there's also a good solo mode. I won't forget that. The solo mode actually works really, really well. And to me, there's a little bit more visceral stuff about what's going on. To me, the game is the tactical area control part of it. Whereas in the other games, that's not... And it's almost like I'm saying something negative about those games, but I think that's actually a feature of those games where it's not about that. It's more about the, like I said, the espionage, and then Sam and Frodo, and kind of the war of attrition and stuff like that, War of the Ring. Whereas this is like I'm constantly, everything's kind of like in play, and it's very important to kind of keep track of everything. And the asymmetry of that just makes it really tight and interesting and all that stuff. So anyway, so I think this one is great. I've not really tried any of the expansions yet. I've got a couple of them. So I'm excited to try those as well. But yeah, it's just really, really interesting, this one. That's Dune War for Arrakis. Number 4 is, you see how it's hard to talk about things sometimes? Because I'm like trying to BS people, you know what I mean? Like you're trying to express a certain abstract feeling about moving crap on a board, and not in a BS way. Anyway, so number 4 is Arcs. And okay, here's the thing with Arcs. I think if I liked the campaign expansion, this would be my number 1. As it is, I think the base game with like the Leaders expansion is a beautiful, wonderful game. I think it's fantastic. It's really good. I mean, I recommend everybody at least try, the base game. And I think for my recommendation, I would say, really, if you get into the game and like it, you should get that Leaders expansion. That to me makes the game perfect, like right where it should be. I did not care in my group that we did not care for the expansion. It's just, I talked about it on a podcast probably a couple months ago. This video is kind of a celebration, so I don't want to beat it up again as I'm calling it my number 4 game of the year. But for my money, the whole like trick-taking thing, the kind of the odd, quirky, sort of multiple types of combat and how that kind of works with the different like raid versus, normal combat, and the way that you can like announce scoring, kind of announce like, what's going to get you points this turn and all that stuff, and how that kind of integrates, and really like kind of how like obtuse the game kind of is, but then once you kind of get through that first layer, it's really just a big old world under there of very interesting things that it constantly was kind of like surprising me, like how things would kind of shake out. And then it's like I said, especially when you kind of just splash in that little spice of those leaders, it takes on this like cosmic encounter kind of vibe. And I say that and I friggin' really mean that. Like you get some really bent leaders in there that just really make the game super, super interesting, even above and beyond the base game. And I think it's apt, and maybe some other people have said this. I'm not trying to like bloviate about this, but I think it's really, really good. And those leaders are so awesome that you can add in from that first expansion. And it just tweaks the game perfectly enough, because the game is a little bit of an odd duck to begin with. It's not like anything else. But then kind of once you get the hang of it, you'll get it. And I think it'll be kind of like Eclipse kind of had this problem where it's a problem, I guess, but not really. Where you had the game, was a lot of fun, and then at the end it was like, okay, there's one big combat that solves the game, and whoever gets that win. And Ark Space Game kind of gets into that, starts to get in that realm. Now you can name your victory points in this, so you can kind of stay away from that. But I found it a tendency to kind of get to that. But when you add in some leaders and stuff, then you've got some stuff kind of teetering that balance in the perfect kind of way, where it doesn't always end up like that. Now I don't necessarily like have a problem with a space combat game where you have a lot of fun and then at the end you have a combat that decides it. Okay, that's fine. It's not a big deal. And I think it kind of just has a tendency to do that often in the base game. But again, so I'm trying to say it's not a problem. Because a lot of times people say stuff like something will happen all the time, and then they'll just say it's a problem. And I get that people get bored of things, right? Like it's just, oh, I've seen this movie already. But this doesn't mean it's really a problem. It's just how it is. Anyway, I just say that because regardless of if it's a problem, the expansion kind of fixes it, if there's something to be fixed. And then, it just adds a lot of extra spice, regardless if that existed or not. So I really, really recommend Arks with that expansion. Again, so that's number 4. Number 3 is SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. This game's, it's great. It's thematic. It's funky. It's not quite as unique, let's say, as Arks. But it is unique for sure in the way that the mechanisms kind of work. It uses a little bit more of a traditional mix, let's call it, of mechanisms. But I think the mixture of that makes it arrive at a very, unique and interesting place where you're kind of trying to discover life on other planets or in other sectors of the universe. And the way that it kind of lends itself to sort of feeling cooperative. In a way, but it's not the sense that it's a co-op, but it's like, you and the other players are all kind of in it together. You all are trying to move towards a common goal of discovering life, and then once you do discover life, discovering more about that life. But the way that the mechanisms work, where you're kind of like sharing area control of spaces, you're kind of competing to set up like little probes and get to different planets and all these different things. And, you know, there's kind of an abstract economical kind of thing with funding, with the cards and the different sort of media points and stuff that you can use to spend on that and upgrade your technologies and things. And it sort of feels like you're all sort of sharing technology in a way and sharing knowledge. But you're still competing. You're still trying to be the first or the best at what you do. But it just intuitively feels like you're working together. Where sometimes in a lot of Euro games, and this is definitely a Euro game, it just kind of feels like you kind of happen to be doing the same thing. And you kind of like, sometimes, and especially in an economic Euro, it's like there's a screwage factor that doesn't need to be there. Because it's like, okay, you screwed me, but like, you would have been making money anyway. But the game introduced this competitiveness to make you screw me just because it's, you know, it's a victory point game now. But like thematically, it like yanks me out of it. Whereas this, that doesn't really have that certain aspect of it. It's like, okay, we're still competing. We're still trying to compete and we're still interacting. It's not like a solitaire game. There's a lot of interaction. So anyway, it kind of really does a lot of that. And it all, like I said, that mixture of all of that stuff works really, really well in SETI. So anyway, that's number 3, SETI. Like I said, these last few, this is tough because I'm looking at these, you know, Arcs, Dune, SETI, this next one, and I'm like, man, this could be number 1. Because I really like all these games. Number 2 is Fromage, and this one has just been, I've just been smitten with this one. It's this weird Lazy Susan thing where you've got worker placement and cheese and little cheese wedges point, and as you turn the Lazy Susan and the cheese wedge points back at you, you get the worker back. So it's kind of like a delayed thing. So if you make like the really expensive good cheese, it takes like 3 turns for it to come back to you. If you make the cheap cheese, you get it back right away. And then you have all of these different combos and things and different special abilities that you can draft, which really accelerates the game. It makes it like a pretty good game into, I think, a great, fantastic game. That to me is like what really sells it, because you can find like little combos, kind of like a Dominion or something. Where you set it up and you're like, okay, and you draft, you know, your abilities, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna try to exploit this, because the real normal game is just super basic. You know, you just place this and you've got like 4 little mini games on the wedges on Lazy Susan, and you're just trying to compete at 4 different games as they presented to you. So the thing moves, you're like, okay, I'm playing a area control game, I'm playing a route game, I'm playing this, I'm playing a set collection game, and then you do that and you get and trade a couple of resources to get little bonus actions. But then you go and draft and you get all these different other special abilities that you can either use or not. That's kind of cool, because you can draft a bunch and be like, I don't really like these. I'm not going to use those. I'm going to keep these 2 normal ones on the board and add these other 2 that I drafted. And that's kind of cool too. Like I said with Life and Runeterra, you know, they just give you the 3 tiles and it's a simple thing. And it's such a simple thing in this, where it's like, here, draft all these tiles. You don't have to use any of them if you don't want. You could just throw them out. I was like, that's great. That's so awesome. It's so simple, but I love that stuff. But yeah, this is one that, I don't know, a few weeks ago, I was really addicted to and playing quite a bit. It's got a great solo mode too, actually. Really, really good solo mode, especially for this type of game, which is a very kind of light, medium weight Euro that is, you know, best served, I think, by playing with friends. But this has a whole like leveling up thing with a solo, and it works really well. So I can't recommend Fromage enough. That's number 2. And this leads us to my number 1, which is definitely my number 1, but these others are really good. That's Jest of Robin Hood. Really had a fantastic time. Maybe the game I've played the most this year. Fromage might give it a run for its money. Arcs and SETI maybe too, but yeah. Jest of Robin Hood it's been great. It is a 2-player head-to-head. One player's playing like Robin Hood, the other one's playing the Sheriff of Nottingham factions, and it's kind of a coin game, although it's not technically a coin game. It's called the Irregular Combat Series game, which is based off of coin. So it's very much a coin game. But this one has like a little bit of hidden movement. It's got some very interesting, route is not the right word, or area control is not the right word, but it's got like sort of a dominance thing going on through different routes where, you know, the sheriff is trying to like deliver gold and collect taxes basically from, you know, taxes that they extort out of the people, and take it home. And Robin Hood is trying to then steal those taxes from the sheriff and you know, disperse them back to people sometimes. And it just has the really, man, it's just such a really, really solid game with a lot of strategy, with a lot of different sort of ways to go about it. It's one of those where every piece of it is strategic. So if you know, like a coin game is you flip a card and then you can like use the action on the card, or you can, instead of doing like the event, sorry, not the action, but the event on the card, or you can take these different actions, and some of those cost money. And so you've got to, you know, manage that. And there's also like the turn order thing. So if you do kind of a weaker action this round, you're going to go first next turn. But if you, it's kind of like you want to wait and wait and wait, and then you're going to do the big expensive action. It's going to cost you a lot of money, and you're definitely not going first next turn, but you better make this count. So you've got that whole, just that simple, do I do an event? Do I do these actions? And which kind of actions is a strong action or a weak action? Just that. Lots of strategy in that. Tons of it. Then you've got all the little pieces on the board, you know, that are moving around and doing stuff and fighting each other and trying to steal gold and trying to tax people. And you're trying to maintain, you know, like the vibe of the people, and whether they're, you know, I can't remember what the names are, but it's like, you know, it's either revolting or it's obedient to the crown, so to speak, and you're trying to maintain that, flip the switches there on all the different areas, and you know, trying to watch out for that immediate victory, because he basically played over 3 rounds, and you can have an immediate victory at the end of each round. And if you don't have an immediate victory, then you're going to basically look at control. Well, and then it'll kind of score, it'll have this little seesaw scoring marker. If you can just eke it over to your side, then you'll win. So there's all these little stages there, and the production, everything is gorgeous. It's the best looking coin game, I think, easily, if you're gonna call it a coin game. It's like big old tarot cards with old style art, and the map looks really cool, and the rule book's great. And it's really quick. I mean, you can play this in about an hour and a half. It's not like a super quick, it's not like a filler or something, you know, but it's one of those like main course games where you could probably play it twice in a row easily. I have played a bunch of this on Board Game Arena too, with various different people. So if you're up for a game, let me know. Happy to play it. And but yeah, it works really well in there too. I think it might still be in beta or something on Board Game Arena. I'm not sure if it's publicly available, but it works really well in there. But yeah, this is, you know, I don't know if this is my favorite coin game, you know, but it's like right up there. It's so like different than the others. It's really its own thing. You know, it's used that whole action selection choice thing to great effect. And I don't know, there's something very, you know, I don't know if wholesome or special or sort of quaint. Feels very comfortable. Like it's a warm little game. And if you go look at pictures and stuff online, you'll see what I'm kind of talking about there. But there's also like there's an intimacy there in the back and forth, the head-to-head piece of it, because it's 2-player only. There's no other player count. And because there's a lot of like interaction, like, you know, you kind of, you put some pieces out and you're like, yeah, you see? You want to go for that. And you're like, you're tricking me. I want to be going over here. So it has, you know, there's an edge to it, but it's a very sharp edge. It's not rough. Like it'll go right into your spine or your throat or whatever. But it's because it doesn't take a year to play. Like I said, it's kind of cozy that way, where it's only like an hour and a half. And Like if you get beat, it's like it feels like you got beat by the other person, or you beat the other person, or you tricked them, or you got tricked. And that's what's really cool. Like it has that, it feels a little old school that way almost, where you're like, I don't know, like you're playing Stratego or something, or I don't know, I'm trying to think of another old game, but doesn't take like an hour and a half or a year and a half to play. You know, that's what it has. It has that real intimate to it. And it's not also like, you know, war, like a death, you know, like magic even. Like you're not, okay, I'm trying to kill my opponent. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, what is this like, okay, this is murder. Whatever, it's fantasy murder. And then, or it's not like war, it's like, okay, this is a lot of murder. It's not, you know, there's not really any murder in this game. So that makes it feel a little bit more comfortable and cozy. So you can be a little bit kind of like, you can talk smack a little bit, and because people just get captured, they go to jail, and then they get, you know, you eliminate pieces, but it's not like it doesn't feel like you're killing them. You're robbing people. You're robbing the government. Who cares? Now, as the government player, you are taxing people, let's say illegally, in my opinion. So, but it's also based on Robin Hood, right? So it's, you know, everybody has the old Fox movie from Disney in their head probably. Although this is based a little bit like on the historical Robin Hood, whatever that means. I don't know, it's been a while since I read the supplementary. Anyway, I'm doing a big old tangent, trying to convey to you a certain feeling. But yeah, Just Robin is great. It's fantastic. I can't recommend it enough. Anyway, that's the top 10 of last year, and I apologize for being late. But anyway, I would say I recommend all these games on here. Easily recommend all of them. So anyway, enjoy the list, enjoy the year, and then more videos coming. Thanks.